Okay, so like I said, this is ANC3C's special meeting for the Wardman Park Large Tract Review. I am Adam Prinzo, Commissioner for 3CO2, which includes the Wardman Park construction site. We have presenters today from DC's Office of Planning. We have a special presenter from ANC3C, as well as the folks from Carmel Partners who are developing the site. We're going to try to stick to the following as quickly, not as quickly, but as timely as possible. So I am going to introduce Stephen and his team in a minute from OP. They will be followed by Commissioner Janelle Pagets from ANC3C. Then Carmel is going to provide a demolition update. And then that'll stream into their typical presentation, and that will be followed by 5 minutes of commissioner questions, and then we will reserve questions and comments 25 to 30 minutes at the end. There also will be parts throughout the evening where we will ask for questions. Am I missing anything? Okay. Oh, actually, yes, sorry. We do have 2 ASL interpreters today, so if you are not speaking, we would kindly ask that you keep your cameras off so the folks who need the interpreters can see them. They should be spotlighted, but just in case. And with that, I will turn it over to Stephen for the Office of Planning, and his spiel will be followed by 5 minutes of questions from the public.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen.
Stephen, I can do that for you.
Oh, you can do it for me? Okay.
Yes. One second, PowerPoint quit on me. Actually, it won't let me. If you want to go ahead, I will put your contact info in the chat.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that'll be good if it's in the chat. Okay, well, good evening. I'm Stephen Wardman with the Office of Planning, and I'm here this evening to discuss the large tract review process. I'm also joined here this evening from the Office of Planning with Jennifer Steingaster and Joel Lawson. So I would first like to thank the ANC for hosting this meeting for the large tract review application. And I am here to listen to any comments that there are from the community. Now, large tract review, although it does not result in an approval or a denial of an application, it does require a coordinated review amongst the district agencies to help to ensure a more coordinated review by district government agencies for the larger projects that would not otherwise occur, such as for smaller developments. The goal of large tract review is to minimize adverse environmental, traffic, and neighborhood impacts, avoid unnecessary public costs in terms of new services and facilities, and to carry out the policies of the comprehensive plan, as the applicant is required to include a section on comprehensive plan compliance. One of the requirements of large tract review is a neighborhood conference or community meeting, which is what this evening's meeting satisfies. This is to give the public an opportunity to comment on the proposal before the applicant. Community comments may be submitted to me by email for inclusion in this report and kept with the office file at the Office of Planning. You may also mail them into the Office of Planning, and that will also be included, I assume, in the chat, because that was together with my one slide. Following this meeting, OP will prepare a report and will include the comments received from district agencies and the public, and the report will be filed, I think I said this already, with the Department of Buildings, after which will be available to the public on the Office of Planning website. Thank you, and I'm available for questions and You may also send me questions to the address that will be up on the chat. Thank you.
I'd also like to just thank the ANC for hosting this meeting and point out that the city and the Office of Planning obviously share in the community's interest in this project being developed to its best possible form. And we also share the interest in affordable housing on the site. The project will be proceeding as a matter of right. There are other zoning tools available, the plan unit development, a map amendment consistent with the recently adopted future land use map. And then there are other tools available through the Deputy Mayor's Office for planning and economic development, such as tax abatement. And we've been working with the developer and this team, and we will continue to work throughout the coming year. And we look forward to hearing from the community tonight. So thank you very much.
Okay, we are going to go to a 5-minute question round. So if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand or put it in the chat. We see we have one hand raised.
Mr. Daldon, I just unmuted you if you would like to ask your question.
Thank you for holding the meeting. I'm a little concerned about the progression when the report is done. How long will that take? And then what time is left for the developer to take advantage of the report and the comments? Can you explain how our comments will be affected?
Mr. Morfin, you're on.
Yeah, I noticed. Any comments that we receive, we will put in the report. And the report will be completed around the beginning of March. Now, because of the type of review this is, a large tract review application does not have an expiration. So unlike other reviews that might go before the BZA or the Zoning Commission, this does not have an expiration date. So that does not, and what was the other part of your question? I believe, how do we react to the comments that are received? I think was what you asked. And what we do, any comments that I receive, I will forward them on immediately to the applicant. That's why if you send them to me by email, it's easy to then just forward them. And then it's up to the applicant to respond to them. As this is does not result in an approval or a denial. It's just a more intensive review. We cannot require anything to be done unless it is actually required by other statutes within the district government, or it's required by zoning or the zoning regulations. That is the only way that anything can be enforced. Otherwise, there's suggestions to the applicant to make it better. They will know where it's coming from, and it will be up to them to decide whether or not it's to include those comments in their development.
Commissioner Prinzel, you're on mute.
Thank you. I see we have another. Mary Beth, oh, there you go. Should be unmuted.
Yes, hello. I'm wondering this stage that this is at with community input and the plant, the demolition is already occurring, correct? So what happened to community involvement? I've been down there and we've been pretty actively criticizing and complaining about the plan and suggesting otherwise for the building, but now I notice that it's already being demolished. So what happened to community involvement, and where are we at right now? Is this going to make any difference, or is this mainly a PR thing? Or, I mean, what is the point of this?
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, okay. Well, first, this is for the construction of the new building. The other building, there is no requirements through the large tract review to demolish it. They could demolish it as long as they pulled a permit. It's not a historic site. It's not an historic district. So they are entitled to demolish the building. to replace it with something else, they have to go through the large tract review process. So nothing can be, they cannot pull their permits in advance of this process concluding. Their construction permits.
I think we have time for one more, and then we have to move on.
Mr. Otten, asking you to unmute.
Yeah, I just piggybacking on that. When you read the regulations, before any construction permits, which includes raising, because it's all a singular project. I mean, they're not raising the building to have a vacant land. They're raising the building to build the proposed project. So it's the regs say that before any applications go in, and kind of common sense speaks to it, you know, large tract review is supposed to start and go. And I guess I wonder, and I don't know why, but I put it in the chat, my question, it seems to have disappeared. Why is it that the large tract review process has started now versus what the regs say, which is before any applications go in regarding construction permits?
Okay.
Again, construction permits being, you know, any kind of permit associated with the construction project.
Okay, well, I agree with you that they would have to demolish the building in order to build something else. However, it's two separate aspects of what's going to happen to this property. And therefore they can demolish. And just because they demolish it doesn't mean they ever have to build anything. You could demolish it and just leave it that way, although I don't anticipate that's what would happen, and I'm not encouraging that. But so they are two separate processes, and the construction one, for which they have not pulled permits because they can't, because this has not yet been approved, cannot move forward until this part is finished. The demolition, it's separate. It really is. It's not part of the building, although it's necessary to do that before you build. They are two separate processes.
Okay, thank you. We are moving on to our next presenter, who the chair of ANC3C, Commissioner Paggins.
Hi, thank you.
There she is.
So yes, I am the current chair of 3C. I was the vice chair in the previous term. And I just wanted a note on to catch anybody up on what 3C had said in the past. So 3C passed a resolution on February 22nd, 2022, when the project came before HPRB review. This was and continues to be a challenging situation because this project is by right, meaning that the owner did not and is not requesting any changes to current zoning, and the property is not subject to a planned unit development PUD process. The only reason we as the ANC got to provide any comment or input was that at the time it was subject to go before only the Historic Preservation Review Board, HPRB, due to the arcade connection from the historically landmark building next door, and that it contributed to the largest historic district of Woodley Park. So the usual things that we as a community can ask for as leverage in supporting the granting of zoning relief or supporting a project via a PUD was not available to us in a by right project, subject at that time to only HPRB review, whose scope doesn't include most of what we asked for in the resolution, but we thought it was important for us to try, especially because Carmel wanted to provide just the bare minimum of requirements in terms of affordable units. And we heard a lot from the community about how it was important to maximize the amount of those units in this project. We also heard from the community about the needs and desire to have grocery store, retail, community amenities such as classrooms, rec space, etc. And in our meeting with Carmel back in 2021, we said, that the community would support them in requesting the required rezoning of the property to allow for those uses. Under current zoning, mixed use is not allowed. We stated that that in the following, be it resolved that ANC 3C strongly supports the commercial zoning and mixed-use development on the former Marriott Wardman Hotel property, specifically in the underground level and the interior street level, which rests on top of the Woodley Park Metro Station. Carmel essentially told us that they don't do mixed-use projects. They do residential and residential only. That is well within their rights as a business and as the property owner. We do not have the power to force any property owner to make or not make improvements to their land that they are not required under current zoning laws and existing regulations. Again, we tried because it was important to the community. We did hear the neighbors in the community and tried to do what we could within the constraints of what's allowable and what's available. Unfortunately, there wasn't much. I and many of my fellow commissioners were frustrated, as many of you were, about this. I'll also note that ANC 3C at that time did not ask the city to purchase the property. If there were commissioners who supported that, they did so in their own capacity and not on behalf of the commission. Thank you. And I'll post a link to the resolution in the chat as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Paget. We are going to move on to Carmel, who has agreed to give a construction and demolition update. The only thing that we would like to ask after their update is we've allotted about 5 minutes for comments or questions. We would like to immediately hear from people in the surrounding area, just because this is a project that is affecting them on a daily basis. So if you could let us know if you are a resident of 3C and or if you are representing somebody other than yourself, such as a group or other entity. And with that, I will turn it over to Carmel.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you to the ANC and the Office of Planning and everyone that's chosen to participate today. We sincerely appreciate it. Quick response to Commissioner Paget's comments, which again, sincerely appreciate. One correction: there are times when we will do mixed use when it's appropriate, when it's allowable by zoning and the highest and best use, but we are a multifamily REIT. We provide housing. That's what we do. That's where we start. That's where our focus is. And that's what we're doing here. And so a quick background before we get into the construction update, just for context for some people who may not be familiar, that the existing use is a 1,200 room hotel, Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. It's over 1 million square feet. We did look at adaptive reuse. Ultimately, the existing structures are just too inefficient. They're aged out. It didn't make sense. Pretty much the entire building was obsolete. The layouts were not friendly to multifamily. And there was a good bit of hazardous materials that needed to be removed. And that's done. And so with that, I'll turn it over to our Senior Superintendent, General Superintendent, Matt Brem, who's been managing the demo and will be managing the construction.
Thank you, Ronnie. As Ronnie mentioned, I'm Matt Brem. I'm involved in the day-to-day operations on the site, and I'm going to update you on the demolition process, where we are and where we're going. The demolition or raise, as it's known, of a project is basically occurs in several phases. The first phase, which Ronnie mentioned is complete, is the strip out and abatement of any hazardous material or environmentally sensitive materials. That process started in May of this year and was completed in October. And this process is absolutely required prior to the issuance of the actual raise permit. Now, the strip out and the abatement entails the systematic removal of interiors in a careful manner, which in turn exposes hidden hazardous or environmentally sensitive materials of all sorts, which a third-party contractor then abates in a regulated manner while being monitored by a third-party entity, which reports directly to the Department of Building. This process was completed. The abatement was certified, and the letter of certification was submitted to the city for approval as one of the requirements. Beyond the strip out and abatement, there's the second phase, which is the actual selective demolition phase. And that is what's going on now. It has been since December, and it will continue until late March of 23, maybe a little beyond that, because the selective demolition is the removal of the remaining interiors after the abatement process. And it also entails the removal of areas of the building that are sensitive with respect to several things. One being adjoining properties, the historic meaningful connection, which we have to protect and not disturb, as well as areas that are publicly sensitive, like the alleyway on the west side of the building that dumps out onto Calvert Street, where we have to very carefully remove the higher levels of the building while protecting the alleyway to maintain its use. And then there's also on the south property line, a very large stretch where we are very close to another building. These areas are ongoing. And then the final reason that we do selective demolition is when there are parts of the building that are potentially dangerous to the construction workers. And those get done as well. This is typically done in a robotic manner with special machines that remove people from the immediate vicinity of the demolition, and they do it in a slower and more controlled manner to achieve that purpose. After selective demolition, or the phases blend together a little bit. Prior to the completion of the selective demolition, the actual building raise will commence, and that we are scheduling to start here in February, probably a couple weeks from now, and it should continue through June of 23. Now, the building raise is the physical removal of the structure, and that is the part that everyone will see the most of. And it's also technically challenging because the structure, it has to be disassembled in a manner that is controlled and is not going to create dust or excessive noise. We've endeavored to control these things to every extent we possibly can. And we feel at this point we are meeting the city's regulations as far as noise and dust and traffic. So we are definitely very sensitive to the community, as we intend to be part of the community when the project is complete. And for that reason, we hear the comments and respond as quickly as possible, because not everything goes perfectly, as you may well know. With that, that basically is the short, brief, high-level update of the demolition. And at this point, I'll turn it back over, I guess, to Ronnie.
Thank you, Matt. I think we can take questions or comments now with regard to demo and construction timing.
Okay, so we've allotted about 5 minutes. Just like I will reiterate, we would like to get input from people who are in the immediate region, just because they are affected by this on a daily basis. So if you could please, when you ask your question, let us know if you are a resident of 3C, or if you are representing an entity other than yourself, such as a group or another organization. You can raise your hand, put it in the chat. Okay, well, I guess we can move on. Oh, wait, we have one question.
Hi. Oh,
You're good?
hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Emily Jacobson. I live very much in 3C. I live in the northern wing of Calvert House at 2401 Calvert Street. So my apartment, in fact, faces the Wardman Tower and part of the Wardman itself. I was wondering if you could do a quick rundown of those like mitigation tactics in terms of noise, debris, respiratory issues, as it might affect me and like my neighbors. In particular, I spend a lot of time in my apartment very, very near here, and am curious to, the livability, the maintenance of that and their current plan.
Sure, absolutely. The mitigation methods are relatively primitive, I guess, because basically the demolition is a fairly primitive process of hammering and crushing. But generally, when it comes to building raise, there is really only two things you can do with a concrete structure. You can hammer it, or you can do what we call processing. The processing is the preferred method. Now, some of the selective demolition that is going on now is hammering, and it is louder, but it does not create as much rubble. So that phase in the south, I guess, east corner of the building, I believe is closest to you, is probably going to linger a little bit longer than the other parts, but we use water, and we use fans and misters to concentrate moisture in the air to trap any dust and drag it down. We also will use and drape what we call demolition netting, which reduces the flying particles that would become a nuisance as well. Like I said, it is pretty primitive, but it generally is effective at reducing some of the byproducts. Now, the sound level is probably the hardest thing to control, but it is proven that the Brock system of robotic removal that we're using generally only emits sound within the acceptable range of less than 80 decibels. And it is not necessarily a continuous noise. And unfortunately, I don't know anything else to describe. Now, when we get to the full building raise, the equipment we use there is actually quieter than the selective demolition equipment, where a large excavator will actually mechanically crush the concrete into very small pieces, which can then be cleaned up relatively quickly and quietly. The equipment we use to do that also is what we call plumbed, meaning the water piping is actually included in the machinery, and it's pumped in through a special pump, which puts a high pressure jet of water directly on the area where the concrete is being processed. And it's generally very effective at reducing dust. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, we will move on. Nancy, you should be unmuted or asked to unmute.
Yes. Hi, thanks for coming out and giving us information. I just wanted to know if there was going to be an actual building implosion. It sounds like you're doing things in more of a floor by floor removal, but I just wanted to know that I live directly across the street.
Yes, this was discussed early on, and while it is novel and very curious, and that is not the preferred method here, we opted to avoid that in its entirety because of the community and the impacts on the community. We will not be imploding any piece of the building, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Childa, I think I pronounced your name correct. You are good to go.
Yes, hi. My name is Gilda Rebel, and I live very, very close to the hotel. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
You're a little muffled, but.
Okay. I have several concerns. The first is in regards to the demolition. I have children that go to the school that directly backs the building, and those kids are outside, a good portion of the day. So again, voicing the concern about the debris, and the impact, not only from the removal, but also during the construction phase, and like, just really clear continued communication of what's going to happen during that time. And, I hope that you would communicate with the school if there's days that it's not safe for those kids to be outside, because that is like a number one priority and worry for me. Another concern is like, what is the most effective way to communicate concerns about what putting that much housing in our area? Like, you can see in that block how many homes and how many apartments are already there. We only have that one elementary school that's a DCPS school that serves that entire population. And so like, that school is an elementary school. It only has pre-K 4 through 3rd grade. There are currently 4th and 5th graders that have to go to school with middle schoolers because there's not enough space in those classrooms. And what the burden of having another 900 units, another 900 families potentially being in this area, it's like, those classrooms are already overpopulated. Like, there should definitely be priority and attention given to allowing that school to expand. Like, there's no way that this neighborhood can accommodate that, and that should be something that we address. Another issue is like, Woodley Park doesn't have a community center, doesn't have a playground anywhere near here. When those kids are in school,
Time 1 second. We're trying to focus on demolition updates more specifically. You can raise community centers and things like that in the next public comment, but your point about the school,
okay. Well, then I would like to ensure that like communication about what's happening to the school and keeping the children safe. They have a whole different set of like, what they're susceptible to as far as air quality, as well as the elders that are in this neighborhood. So just clear communication and ensuring that we are working with the school to keep our kids inside if there's any days where they shouldn't be out.
Sorry, if I may, part of this large tract review process, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but and I'm hoping OP can jump in too here, is to have the whole of the district agencies such as DC Public Schools be involved in this conversation and this review, and that would allow them to do what they need to do to make sure their ducks are in a row to accommodate this. It is zoned for this use, meaning that the district has, this is allowable use. We're not going against anything. OP, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I did request comments from DC Public Schools. I have not yet heard back from anybody. I can, when I'm back in the office, send another request and ask that they please comment on this proposal.
I might add to that as well, that as a father and a grandfather, I have children as well, ma'am, and all of us workers do as well, and we are very sensitive to the children playing nearby, and we want the comments from the community so that we can make adjustments as necessary, so that we don't impact the children or the elderly in the neighborhood.
And we've met with both schools in the immediate area multiple times now, including very recently, just to check in. Well, initially to understand their schedule and capacity and typical behaviors in terms of where the kids are at what time. And that's a big reason we've chosen to preserve that park out front, because we know how important it is for recess and PE. And we've met with them as recently as this week, and it's all been positive feedback thus far. We've consistently stressed to them that we're always available if there's a concern or question, and we encourage them to reach out, and they haven't, which is why we've checked in with them, and they haven't reached out because there have not been problems, because of what Matt just said, that it is at the forefront of our awareness and conscious daily.
Okay, we are going to take these last two, but we need to move on. So if you can ask your question rapidly. Thank you. Bill, you should be unmuted.
Hi, I am a neighborhood resident about a block from the property. My question is really more about the development, less than the raising. So I don't know if this is for later in the meeting, but I'm concerned about the percentage of affordable housing that has been allocated by the developer and what leverage we have as a community to influence that, to raise that percentage, because I heard the percentages were somewhat low, and I think that's unfortunate.
We can answer that in the next, we're trying to stick to demolition here. Okay, and Ms. McKay, I believe you are unmuted, or should be. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I am wondering why and this contractor was selected when they said that they only do housing and not mixed use, when clearly the community has asked. We have things like community centers, playgrounds, I mean, things, grocery store, I'm just shocked that who selected these folks, that they would not be amenable to doing things that the community is asking for.
I personally, Commissioner Paggett.
I can answer that, sure. This is a private property. It was put up for sale in a bankruptcy auction, and a private company purchased the private property. So there's just like if you own your home, the community can't tell you what to do, with a kitchen renovation or anything. So it is a capitalist society, so it's private property. Thank you. I think we had a couple
Commissioner Prinzo, you're muted.
Yes, Commissioner Paggett, go ahead.
Do we want to move on to the design section, or is...
Yeah, and then we can circle back to questions on this in the public comment as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will turn it back over to Carmel for the design section of this meeting.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Sorry, I just need to get the right order here. Okay, here we are. I'm Shalom Baranis, and thank you for having us here this evening. The presentation I'll give here, I'll try to be quite brief. It's very similar to the presentation we've made to HPRB, and obviously it's been updated a bit. So in this particular image, you can see our site in the bluish color, and we are part of a much larger lot that includes the Woodley West on the left-hand side, which would be the west, and then the Wardman Tower, which, as you know, is historically designated on the east. On the upper left there, we are showing the extent of the footprint of the existing hotel that's shown in that brownish color. And then just above it, that bluish rectangle represents the existing underground garage that we're going to be retaining in place. And the Wardman Tower is outlined in that red dashed line. And we are going to be connecting to that building, and the boundaries of that historic designation are represented by the red dashed line. As you can see, they have these two tails reaching out to the west. So here is the Wardman Tower, as you all know. And on the lower right is the arcade, the gallery that's been referred to that we will be connecting to, and I'll come back to that shortly. On the south side of our property, we have the building you see on the upper center. I believe that's the Shoreham North. And I want to show this because actually the location of this building had an enormous impact on our design. This is a very unusual building that has all the apartments facing south. There are no apartments in this building facing north into our site. So therefore, what we have on the north side facing our site is a very tall blank masonry wall that we have to obviously address as part of our design. Here you can see that we've really centered the development, the new construction on our property in the center of the property and then at the southern end. We're not really proposing any major new construction on the northern end of the property. And there's several reasons for that. One of them, of course, is the most obvious one that's been mentioned already, which is that we wanted to continue to give the public access to the open space that's there now. As you'll see, we'll be enhancing that space, but we felt it was just such an important feature historically of the site that we wanted to maintain it as much as possible. Also, there were other considerations. We didn't want to reduce the view shed of the Wardman Tower from Woodley. So you can see that with our building A on the right, we held the leg of that building south of the Wardman Tower so as to, again, not impinge on the view of that building from the west. And then also the new Woodley building on the upper left, or the newer Woodley building, is a bit of an unusual building. It's turned sideways to the street. Its main facade and its main entrance face into the site where that circular driveway is. And we wanted to respect that. We didn't want to build directly in the front of that. And so we felt it was important to maintain an open courtyard space in that area. And in addition to all this, we also wanted to increase the setbacks on the east side and the west side. On the east side, where we have the Calvert House, you can see we have a fairly major setback there. And then on the west side, we're also increasing the setback pretty significantly from what exists today. And you can see that more clearly on the right image here, right side image here, where again, on the left side, on the west side, we've dramatically increased that setback and we are maintaining a service drive there. And then also we are introducing more open space next to the Calvert House. The interesting thing about these two images shown together is that they compare the footprint of our development with the footprint of the existing building that's there now. So on the left-hand side, that entire gray area represents the footprint of the hotel. And although we're building, approximately the same square feet as it exists today, our development, of course, is much more compact. That's because we don't have the major volumes of the ballrooms that the current hotel does. So we've been able to introduce a lot more open space. And in fact, we're more than doubling the amount of open space on the site from what currently exists today. Here's a view looking to the east along Woodley of that open space that we're going to be retaining and enhancing. And then these are a few images of the kind of character we're going to try to develop as we enhance the landscaping. As you all know, Olmsted designed Rock Creek Park. We'd like to capture the spirit of some of the elements of the park in our open spaces. And you also see that he designed Central Park on the upper left there, which has a lot of similarities in terms of its landscaping character to Rock Creek Park. Here are more views of that space. And I want to call your attention to the lower center image where we show those two historic pillars. We have two pairs of these on the site. We're going to be retaining both pairs, and we're going to be realigning the walkways on our site so that they coordinate with the location of these existing pillars. We're not going to be relocating these pillars. In this image, this aerial image looking to the southeast, again, on the lower left, I want to just call out, just make sure that you understand and notice the scale of this open space that we're creating. And again, want to point out that we are holding our construction back, our new building back away from the Woodley. And also on the lower right, I talked about the front of the Woodley building there facing onto an open space. And I think you can see pretty clearly here that we are maintaining that frontage. And then also on the south side, by the Shoreham Hotel there's that blank wall that I talked about of the Shoreham North that really becomes quite a major feature on our site. Here's a view that shows in context the overall scale of our building in relationship to the Wardman Tower. Sorry, and here's a closer up view with the Wardman Tower on our left, the historic pillars maintained in place with the new walkway. And then in the center of the slide, you see the arcade that we're going to be connecting to and extending. And here's a closer up image of that as it meets with our building A. So here's a view from the opposite side that Calvert is at the lower left. We're looking to the northwest. And here I just want to point out at the bottom of the screen that we are aligning our building with the two adjacent buildings along Calvert, and we are stepping the building down. The upper floors of our building are set back so that we maintain somewhat of a uniform cornice line along Calvert. And these images here show this all a little more clearly. I do want to point out that we are doing quite a bit to try to activate our building at the ground floor along Calvert. We have an entry to a driveway there, a drop off underneath our building. And we are going to be populating the entire ground floor of our building with a lobby and other support spaces, again, in an effort to activate the street. These are overall site sections, and I'm showing you these just so it's reasonably clear that we are very much respecting the overall scale and the height of the adjoining buildings. Our buildings are shown in the green and the light bluish color here. We're just slightly lower than the main parapet of the Wardman Tower, and the top of our penthouse is well below. I think it's about 18 or 19 feet below the peak of that cupola on the Wardman Tower. So, I do think we fit in quite nicely into the context of the neighborhood. We also are making a real effort here to introduce a richness and a variety architecturally to the street and to the neighborhood by using different materials. And we are using materials that I think are very contextual and well coordinated with other materials we see in the neighborhood. Our new building on the left there has a verdigris terracotta facade. Terracotta is a material you see in many of the historic buildings up and down Connecticut Avenue and certainly all over the district. And the color there relates to a lot of the copper trim that you see on these historic buildings, of course, that you also see on the bridges in the area. The building on the right, while it's very similar in terms of its sinuous plan, has a very, very different facade type. It's not in terracotta, but it's in brick. It's a darker brick and with bronze windows that relate a little bit more closely to the Woodley and the Wardman Tower. In these two images, our two different buildings are shown here in more detail. We're developing a very vertical quality to the facades of our building, with the expression of these bays, which are interrupted by balconies. And that's the case in both buildings. We generally have these punched windows, and both the verticality, the sizes of the bays, the balconies, the articulation of these windows, we've designed all of that to relate to the scale and the elements that you see on the Wardman Tower, the historic building. Obviously, we're not mimicking that building in any way, but we are relating to it on many, many different levels in terms of scale, detail, verticality, and the overall character of the windows. Here's a close-up of one of our two buildings. This is the terracotta building. You can see it steps down on the north side, just to give it more interest as one approaches the site. The terracotta facades here do land on a stone base, which as it moves into the site on the right there, you can see steps up to basically mark where the main drop-off is, where the main lobby is for this particular building. Now I'm going to just very quickly take you through the inside of these buildings with these floor plans, just so you can have an appreciation and understanding of where we've placed various uses. First of all, I'll start by saying that we do have an underground garage that has many levels to it. I'll show you shortly, but we have 4 different access points to that garage. There's one off of 24th Street. We're going to reuse the existing drive that's there. That leads to the loading and one of the garage entrances. Then coming off of Woodley, we have the existing ramp at the north side, which services the existing garage. And then continuing there, there's another ramp that's also existing that will service the other portion of garage under Building B. We then have another entrance into the garage off of Calvert. That entrance is accessed with this driveway that runs underneath the building and then continues up to the north. On the Woodley level, where we have the main entrance to our project and the main drop-off, these areas shown in purple on the left here, those are the main lobby areas with some support space. Each building has its own separate lobby, and you'll see that the building on the left has 2 lobbies, one on this level and then one on the Calvert Street level. Now, if we go down 1 level below this Woodley level, below these lobbies, on the right, we have, in purple again, the support and amenity spaces, which will service the 900 units that we have in this project. The courtyard below, to the south of these amenity areas, is a courtyard that, unlike the courtyard on the north, which is publicly accessed, this courtyard is only privately accessed. It's just for the residents of the building. And that is surrounded by, it's lined with individual apartment units, both on the east side and the west side. Now, I'm going to take you down into the site, level by level, until we reach Calvert. On the left, we're now below the amenity space I just showed you. And here we have parking underneath both our towers. And we designed that parking to connect to the existing garage, that's that large rectangle that you see along Woodley there. And because we didn't want to expose our parking garage to Calvert, we included a series of units here in this very short leg of the building that is directly adjacent to Calvert. And then as we go down another level on the right, we have another parking level, and that level is not connected to the existing garage, but it is connected to the garage on the upper levels. And then finally, on the right here, we are at the Calvert Street level. And again, as I said there, we introduce a fairly large lobby in order to activate the street. That lobby is connected to parking directly behind it. And it also has this driveway, which passes underneath the building, gives access to the loading directly to the right, and then continues uphill slightly to reach the service area for the existing Woodley building. And then the upper floors above Woodley, the typical floors, all the way up to the roof are shown on the left here. These are very typical double loaded corridors, each one having its own, each building has its own elevator cores. And then on the upper right, we're showing here how we're setting the highest floor of the building back several feet from the facades on each of the sides of the building, on both buildings. And then on the lower right, showing how we're covering the primary roof of this project with green roofs. So this is the last image I have. I think, and I hope you'll agree that we're opening up the site quite a bit, introducing a lot more green space. I think this will really be a significant improvement over what exists today. And I think it also will provide the city with a type of residential unit, a type of residential development that is really very, very hard to find close to the downtowns of cities. So I will conclude with that, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. We are actually going to go to Renata first because I did not see her trying to raise her hand during the last segment. So I believe you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if you could hear me or not. Yes, I am definitely, and everybody can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. I am absolutely going crazy with the noise. I'm practically, I can walk to the driveway, that you're talking about, the one that goes to Calvert. I can walk there in 1 minute from my building. That's how close I am. The demolition is just driving me absolutely insane. I don't know what to do about it, but I do want it to, I've noticed, and I don't know if I'm right about this. I know that DC allows 7 to 7, Monday through Saturday, but I've been noticing that and I hope I'm right on this, that you don't work on the weekends and you don't work on MLK holiday. You didn't seem to, or at least not the noisy part, and that you seem to finish off like around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Am I right on that? And can you maybe confirm that that's what's going to continue? Because I want you to know I have earplugs, I have noise canceling headphones, I've got to close my windows and put my fan on in order to sleep. It's driving me crazy. So I just want to know how you can help me. I mean, I'm literally going out of my mind. I mean it. It's awful. It's just awful.
Well, first off, I'm sorry to hear that it's bothering you. I sincerely wish that it were not. And I'll just stress that we're doing it as efficiently as possible, and we're doing what's necessary to provide the housing. So in terms of the working hours, yes, what you said is generally correct. And I think Matt has dropped off. Correct, as in Monday through Friday around 7 a.m. to 3 or 4, generally. And I believe it's our intention to hold those hours, but I assure you that we'll be within the legal working hours, not outside of those hours. I can talk to Matt and just make sure that we don't have intentions of extending the demo hours beyond what you've been seeing the last few weeks. And, we're going to wrap up this phase that we're in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then hopefully it'll be a bit quieter.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to move on to the rest of public comment. Similar to the last segment, if you could let us know if you're a 3C resident and whether or not you represent another entity other than yourself. And for this, we are going to limit questions for about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes per person. Ideally, we would like to wrap up around 7:45. So please raise your hand or put it in the chat. Emily, I believe you're unmuted.
Hi, thank you. As I said, I live in Calvert House. I think we're well aware of where that is at this point in the presentation. I imagine affordability is going to be a conversation that other members of this, chat are going to wonder about. So I just want to open, what is the intended price point for the apartments that will be created in this? Like, how does that compare to others in the area? And what, as currently planned, is the plan for affordable or deeply affordable housing in this new unit or units in this new space? Thank you.
So it'll be 8% affordable at 60% AMI. And the unit mix will mirror the unit mix throughout the rest of the building. So it'll have the same ratio generally of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And in terms of the rents for the market rate, so the 60% AMI affordable housing is a strict calculation as mandated by the inclusionary zoning regulations, which are all public and online. I don't know them offhand, but it's fairly easy to find. And we'll certainly adhere to that. The market rate housing, I don't know. We're 2 to 3 years away from actually delivering those units. It will be priced according to market at that time.
Thank you. Sharina, I believe I pronounced your name right. You should be able to unmute.
Sorry, is that me, Shira?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. You're good.
That's okay.
We can hear you.
Just add a few syllables to my name. Yeah, I guess it's similar to the last person. I guess this isn't so much a question as just, I mean, I want to share the comment about deeply affordable housing. I live right in the area. I'm in 3C at 2701 Connecticut. So basically diagonally across the street from this. It is so important that we have more deeply affordable housing than what you have set aside. I don't think it's nearly adequate. And I just want to put in there that I think there could be better uses of the space in an area where we already have so much expensive housing. I think what we really need is more truly deeply affordable housing. So I just wanted to make that plug. I don't think this is an adequate plan.
Thank you. And before we go on, we have a question that was submitted by email. It's about parking. It's from a Woodley Park resident that your parking plan includes 4 times as much as required by law. Other neighborhoods in the building, except for the Wardman Tower, have much less. Why are you including so much parking? And is it to satisfy a parking requirement for a building that might be built on the site at a later date?
So no, it is not for anything to be built at a later date. It's for our plan as presented. It's parked around 1 space per unit, which we've studied fairly intently the demand for parking, and this is where we landed. We want to meet the demand. We've had just as much, probably more commentary of precisely the opposite, that you better be putting in enough parking because there's no parking on the street, and we don't want a bunch of cars in the area that don't have a place to park. So, we're navigating dueling wishes, but we've met what we feel is the market demand.
Nigel, we are going to ask you to unmute. We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I live in the Shoreham West Co-ops. That's on Calvert, just across the street from the white building that's currently being selectively demolished. And I have a question to you, Shalom, from your presentation. The accompanying document for this meeting laid great stress on the open space, the neighborhood space that was being created through this development. And you talked about that in part. Can you tell me, from the Calvert Street side, is there access to that open space, or does one have to walk down to Connecticut and then back up to Woodley again? Is there the road that you mentioned that leads to the service areas? Does that connect through to what are described as community open spaces? Thank you.
Sure. No, there is no through block connection. You can't get from Woodley to Calvert or from Calvert to Woodley. And one of the reasons for that is because by zoning, we do have to physically connect our building to the Woodley building with an enclosed, conditioned walkway, basically. So that would not allow, zoning would not really allow us to put any connection from the south to the north without walking through the building.
Okay, Robin, we are going to ask you to unmute.
Working?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, hi. I am a member of the Wardman Hotel Strategy Team, and we've been working with the Office of Planning and others and trying to improve the situation as we see it. And I have a quick question for the architect, of whom I am somewhat of a fan for a number of his projects, but I don't understand how he can ally the tear down of this building with the article he most recently wrote on preserving the FBI building. The ecological damage, as you pointed out, Mr. Baranis, is so extreme. But anyway, that's your call. My other point is we've worked with the Office of Planning and talked to other city officials about the lack of affordability in this building. Now, Carmel has done nothing wrong in terms of they're doing what they're required, basic IZ, but we understand that they were also offered numerous incentives and other kinds of advantages, but turned them down. The Office of Planning told us that the Office of Planning was disappointed in this, but it's nothing as compared to what your neighbor
Perhaps
rate
I can.
of affordability is being provided and the wonderful amenities that could be provided by this transit-oriented site. So
Excuse me.
we feel like you're a bad neighbor from the get-go. Anyway, thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. We do have a comment, unless does somebody want to respond to that?
Oh, I can respond. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
First of all, on the demolition question, the first thing we did was look at the possibility of renovating the existing building when we were brought onto this project. And the problem with the existing, there's several problems with the existing building. One of them is that, a lot of the, obviously, is a very large ballroom space, which is really not reusable in any way for residential apartments. And then when we looked at the towers for residential use, we found that the floor-to-floor dimension from slab to slab was so tight that that if we were to try to put apartments in there, we would not be able to meet code in terms of ceiling heights by the time we put in the sprinklers and the ductwork. We would have wound up with ceilings in kitchens, bathrooms, hallways, which would have been under 6 feet 6 inches, which is not allowed by code. So, buildings are like plastics. You can recycle some, you can't recycle others. And in this case, this was just not a building that was recyclable for residential use.
And I'll just add that the use was not recyclable, but the physical building itself, something like 80 or 90% of the building is recyclable and will be recycled. The materials.
Okay, there was a comment in the chat about the building being literally next door to a metro stop and multiple bus lines. There should be an encouragement for people to use public transit rather than bringing their own cars. Sam, we are going to ask you to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sure. I live in the Shoreham North, and my question is, I've just noticed for the first time, obviously we have a giant brick wall back there that everyone's going to be looking at. Are there plans to make it look attractive, paint it, do something? It's also going to retain a lot of, it's on the north side, but it's going to retain a lot more heat into our building as well.
We don't, Carmel does not own that building, so we don't really have the right to do anything at all to that building. From our standpoint, we're going to be landscaping as much as we can adjacent to it. But that is really all we can do.
Thank you. Wes, we are going to ask you to unmute.
Yes. Hi, everybody. One of the things I'll comment on is I'm glad to see you seem to be preserving the Wardman Tower because it is a historical place and has a long history. And the other thing that I would think of is, again, in affordable housing in relation to seniors. You have a lot of seniors in this neighborhood. Yes, they may not live but so long, and you can replace it with younger people. But in your consideration for about apartments, would you at least consider some apartments that are very affordable, not $8,000 a month, and that also may be fitted for the handicap, seniors, et cetera, because that could be a selling card again, if you made 10 apartments available for the handicapped and the seniors. I'm just tossing that out as an idea. As well as I'm against the glass brick housing that buildings you're putting up, but that's just my sense of architecture. I hate glass bricks. Thank you.
Fair enough. We respect everyone's opinion. As far as handicap accessibility, all units will be fair housing. All common areas will be ADA compliant. And then we have a certain percentage of what they call ANSI, which Shalom can speak a lot more intelligently about than I can. Shalom, can you give a quick rundown on that?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I really need to defer to Ari Blumenthal, who's on here, but I don't know if you can unmute him in order to address that. But a certain percentage of the units are actually outfitted with all of the dimensions, all the clearances, all the hardware, the grab bars, all of those elements that you would find in an accessible unit.
Yes. So DC mandates 15% of all new units be adaptable to that higher level of accessibility to make sure that there's something available as that building is rented up, that there's a high likelihood of accessible units being available when they are rented. So that's 15% of our 865 units or so.
Okay, we have two questions in the chat. One from a Woodley Park resident who is asking, are these units being priced to be high-end, mid-market, and how do construction decisions play into the eventual determination of unit prices?
It's a subjective question, but I would say, in short, comparable to buildings like the Woodley.
Okay, and for the second question, this is a resident from a neighboring building on Calvert Street who has concerns about the scaffolding being increased and there is not proper lighting. Also, it appears as though the scaffolding is not sectioned off, and she has seen dogs go down the steps of the park tower, if that is something that can be addressed.
So the scaffolding is actually coming down shortly. We are working on getting lights out there. Adam actually himself told us that it was a little dark under there at night because the overhead protection is blocking the street lights. So we're working on lighting. It may come down before we get the lighting, but we are genuinely working on it. I'm not just saying that. The site team knows we need to put lights out there. And the dogs coming down the steps, can I get some more context on that?
Sure, I will ask, and I can also follow up after.
Okay. You can copy me on it, Adam, if you'd like.
Okay. And then we're gonna ask M to unmute. M, I think you are muted. No. Okay. Okay, we can go to Chris. Chris, you are unmuted. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, real quick. My name is Chris Otten. I'm with DC for Reasonable Development. We're tracking LTR. We're tracking these processes to understand how they work. I also volunteer right nearby this demolition site right now in the Wardman Hotel. I think just for OP right out the gate, I want to raise up what I started with. The reason why LTR is required before construction permits, including raise permits, are applied for is exactly what some of the folks mentioned before earlier. Planning for demolition is as equally important as planning for the construction. We have the school there. The comms point should have already been set up. There should have been a regular sort of conversation happening about the dust and all that. This is why LTR, I think, is supposed to happen before, including even raising. I just want to point out real quick here. I'll let you speak, but real quick, Carmel has said to the public's request, no to the connection through the site, no to the retail that's been wanted, no to less parking, and no to more affordable housing units. The no to more affordable housing units is startling in that I have an email, I think I sent it to the ANC today, from John Falchicchio. He's the head of DemPed. He said, we really hope Carmel will evolve its position and apply for the HANTA program to get more affordability at the site. That's a resounding comment put on the record by everybody tonight. And we have made the offer. Can you push your client? Carmel, first of all, the raise should be stopped until this LTR is done. But two, you have to apply for these incentives and take advantage of it to meet these affordable housing needs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's hanging up on the hooks to the right as you face the door. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody want to answer that question?
I mean, I can answer the one question about the connection through the site. Basically, by zoning, we are not allowed to do that, unfortunately. I think it would be very nice to have a connection like that. But because zoning requires us to connect physically to both the Wardman Tower and to the Woodley, it's just not possible to have a connection north to south.
Okay, well, we are at
Well,
time.
to address
I'll
like, sorry,
yield to you, Commissioner Paggins.
the one thing about the raise permits, I don't know if anybody from OP is still on. I know they had a pretty hard stop at 7:30. And we don't have anybody from the Department of Buildings on. But my understanding is that the process is separate. Oh, it looks like Jennifer just popped in.
Yes, you are correct. They are two separate processes. Demolition is not subject to LTR. LTR is subject to building applications and building permits.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and with that, if anybody would like to raise,
Can I just add one thing to that?
Sorry.
So to get the demo permit, you have to provide formal notification to the neighbors. And we did that and way beyond that. Not just notification, but many sit-down meetings with all of the buildings in the immediate area, with great detail provided about our plan and all questions answered and ongoing availability for any and all concerns. So I don't want anyone to think we just, started quietly demoing 1 million square feet in the night. It's far from that.
Okay. So with that, I believe we will. I'm going to ask you to unmute just because we could not hear you before.
Okay. I apologize. I live in a different ANC, but I grew up going to the zoo, etc. Have a great fondness for Woodley Park. I appreciate very much the detail to which the slides were presented and configured and explained. However, I have to agree with Mr. Morrison that I don't think the architectural style is compatible with the neighborhood. I think it's ugly and ultra modern. There is a community in the next block north, I guess, whose name I don't know, but that is much more attractive. That's just my 2 cents as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We had a hard stop at 7:45 and it is 7:55. So with that, we would like to thank everybody for coming today. If you have any other comments that you'd like to make, you can send them to OP. I believe their information was in the chat earlier. You can also send it to one of us and we are happy to get it over to them. So with that, thank you everybody. And I actually think Commissioner Pagets had an announcement about her.
Well, I was trying to pop in the email addresses in the chat again.
Got it.
I believe ours, you can also email all at ANC3C. Is it .com?
.org. All at ANC3C.org.
Or OP. So, and also thank you all for your time and input. The team, the community, everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.